Before we get started, if you enjoy relaxing late-night scary stories, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I post new true creepy tales every week, perfect for drifting off to sleep with just the right amount of chills. Your support helps keep these stories coming, so grab a blanket, settle in, and let's begin. The first time I heard it, I thought it was a joke. The sound came from the tree line, thin, wavering, almost human, but wrong. It called my name in the same voice my brother uses when he's half asleep, dragging out the syllables. Aaron, come here, help me. I froze halfway to the fire pit, a bundle of wood in my arms. My brother was back at camp. I could see him, sitting on a log, head bent over the flicker of his phone screen. The voice was still coming from the dark. A cold ripple went through me. The air felt heavier, like the night had pressed in closer without warning. Do you hear that? I asked. Jake didn't even look up. Hear what? The voice stopped. The woods were silent except for the faint hiss of the fire. No crickets. No wind. Just that suffocating stillness. I tried to laugh it off, dumping the wood by the fire. Thought I heard someone out there. Jake's head snapped up at that, his face suddenly sharp in the firelight. Don't joke about that out here. I frowned. About what? He glanced toward the tree line. Voices in the woods. You don't know the stories. Before I could answer, a sound tore through the quiet. It wasn't loud, but it made my skin crawl. It was like someone imitating the sound of a fox's scream, but off by just enough to feel wrong. Too deep. Too human. Jake's eyes widened. Pack your stuff. Now. Wait, what? He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. Aaron. We're leaving. You never answer it. You never go toward it. You hear your name out here, it's not them calling. Somewhere behind the trees, the voice came again, clearer this time, my voice. Jake. Over here. Jake's grip tightened, his nails digging into my arm. His face was pale now, all traces of the cocky older brother act gone. That's my voice, he whispered. The imitation called again, louder this time. Jake. Hurry. The tone was urgent, but it wasn't right. Every word was too evenly spaced, like it was reading from a script. The way it hit the K in his name was mechanical. Jake yanked me toward the tent. Don't look back. But. Don't. We stuffed our sleeping bags and gear into our packs with frantic, clumsy movements. My fingers kept slipping, and the zipper felt like it had suddenly shrunk to half its size. Every few seconds, the voice called again, sometimes mine, sometimes Jake's. Each time, it sounded closer. We stumbled to the car, the beam from my flashlight cutting across the ground in shaky arcs. The forest seemed to lean toward us, shadows crowding the edges of the light. When we were about 20 feet from the car, something stepped out from between the trees. It was tall. Too tall. The firelight from camp caught its outline for just a second, and my brain fought to process what I was seeing. Its limbs were thin, almost stick-like, but jointed wrong. Its head hung too far forward, and the hair, or fur, on its body was patchy, like it had been ripped out in chunks. And then it spoke. In my brother's voice. Aaron. Please. I'm hurt. I froze. My flashlight beam shook over its chest, and I could see its ribs pushing against its skin, the way an animal looks after starving for weeks. Jake grabbed my arm again, snapping me out of it. Get in the car. I ran. Behind us, the thing let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a cough, then the underbrush exploded with movement. It was following. We slammed into the car, Jake fumbling with the keys. The headlights cut through the dark, and for the briefest second, the thing was right there at the tree line, grinning with a mouth full of teeth that didn't belong in anything human. The engine roared, gravel spitting out from under the tires as Jake floored it down the dirt road. But over the noise of the engine, I swear I could still hear it. My voice. Whispering my name. We tore down that forest road like the devil himself was behind us, the car lurching with every pothole and dip. The trees on either side blurred into streaks of black, the headlights carving a narrow path through the dark. Jake's knuckles were white on the wheel. Don't look out the windows. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. But the problem was, once he said it, I couldn't stop glancing. At first, there was nothing, just the smears of shadow and the bouncing beam of our lights. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. Something keeping pace with us. It wasn't running like a person. Its body jerked in strange, broken motions, like each limb was being yanked by a different set of strings. The pale, skeletal figure darted between the trees, disappearing and reappearing in flashes. Every time I lost sight of it, I prayed I wouldn't see it again. I did. Right beside my window. Its face was pressed almost close enough to touch the glass. The eyes were wrong, black and deep, reflecting the headlights like an animal's. But the grin was human. Wide and fixed, showing those jagged, mismatched teeth. It mouthed something at me. I couldn't hear it over the engine and my heartbeat, but I knew what it was saying. My name. I shoved myself back into the seat, hands clamped over my ears, but the image burned into my brain wouldn't leave. Jake swung the car around a bend, and for a split second, the road ahead was swallowed in darkness before the headlights found it again. That's when I saw the shape. Standing dead center in the road. We swerved, tires screaming, gravel spraying in all directions. The car fishtailed, slammed back onto the path, and kept going. I looked back. The road was empty. Jake didn't slow down until we saw the faint glow of a highway in the distance. He finally pulled over, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his temples. I sat there, shaking, my nails dug into my palms so hard they'd drawn blood. He turned to me, voice low and tight. Aaron. You don't tell anyone. They hear the stories, they come looking. And if they go looking. He didn't finish. Somewhere deep in the woods, far behind us, a voice called out. Jake. Aaron. Wait. We didn't sleep that night. Jake drove until the highway turned into a two-lane blacktop, and the two-lane turned into the cracked streets of a forgotten town. We found a motel with one flickering vacancy sign, the kind of place where the walls smell faintly of mildew and the carpet swallows sound. The old man at the desk didn't look up when Jake slid cash across the counter. He just muttered something about keeping the curtains shut and handed over a tarnished brass key. Inside, the room was dim and still, the only noise the hum of a rattling air conditioner. Jake collapsed into the bed by the door, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I sat on the far side of the room, staring at the curtains. Every so often, I thought I saw a shadow move against them, but it could have just been the passing of a car outside. Except, there weren't any cars. By 3:17 a.m. The stillness was unbearable. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, tried to slow my breathing. My reflection in the cracked mirror looked pale and drawn, eyes too wide. That's when I heard it. From the other side of the bathroom door. Jake's voice. Low. Urgent. Aaron. Come here. It's outside. A cold, metallic taste filled my mouth. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The voice came again, more insistent this time. Hurry. We have to go. Then, slowly, fingernails scraped down the wood of the bathroom door. I backed up until my shoulders pressed into the tile. My eyes darted to the frosted glass window above the shower. I could climb out. Maybe. The scraping stopped. Then, in a voice that was almost mine, it whispered. We can see you. The air seemed to thin. My ears rang, my vision narrowing to a tunnel. I shoved the shower curtain aside and reached for the window. My hands fumbled at the latch, forcing it open with a groan. Cold night air rushed in. And with it, a smell like rotting meat baking in the sun. I froze. A face was looking in from outside. It was mine. But stretched, skin too tight over bone, eyes sunken black. Its mouth opened wider than it should, showing teeth filed into uneven points. I fell back into the tub, heart hammering. From the other room, I heard Jake shout, followed by a crash, like the door had been kicked in. And then, something else's footsteps in our room. Slow. Deliberate. Heavy enough to make the floorboards groan. I knew then, it hadn't stayed in the forest. It had followed us here. The footsteps stopped just outside the bathroom. Silence stretched thin as wire. I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears, each beat louder than the last. Then, 3 slow knocks. Not hard, not frantic. Calm. Like whoever, or whatever, was out there knew I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't answer. The doorknob turned once, twice, then stopped. A faint scratching began again, but this time it came from higher up. Near my head. My eyes flicked toward the sound and I saw the thin shadow of fingers sliding under the narrow gap at the top of the warped doorframe, impossibly long and jointed wrong. They bent in ways no human fingers could. The smell hit me again, thick, rancid, clinging to the back of my throat. Then, in a voice perfectly identical to my own, it said, "Let me in." I gripped the edge of the tub until my nails splintered against the porcelain. The fingers withdrew, the shadow shifting away from the door. For a heartbeat, I thought it had left. That's when the window behind me shattered. Glass rained into the tub, a jagged, glittering waterfall. I didn't have time to think, I launched myself over the toilet, kicking the bathroom door open. The room outside was dark. Jake was gone. The air conditioner rattled in the silence. Then, from the far corner of the room, Jake's voice. "Aaron. Over here. Quick." I didn't move. In the gloom, I could just make out a shape crouched in the shadows, too low to be standing, too tall to be sitting. It shifted, and I saw the gleam of those teeth. The thing uncoiled itself from the corner, unfolding on limbs that stretched far too long, its head brushing the ceiling as it rose. I bolted for the door. It hit the wall with a sound like cracking branches as I tore it open and stumbled into the cold night. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it following, footsteps slamming the ground in jerky bursts, like it was vaulting forward on all fours. The gravel cut into my bare feet as I sprinted across the lot. My eyes locked on the neon sign above the office, the only light in the darkness. I crashed through the glass front door, scattering shards across the checkered linoleum. The old man behind the counter didn't flinch. He looked up at me, eyes clouded but sharp enough to see the terror on my face. "You brought it here," he said flatly. Behind me, something heavy hit the pavement. And then the neon light outside flickered, once, twice, before going out completely. The darkness that followed the neon's death was absolute. I could hear it outside, its breath, wet and rattling, like air forced through a cracked whistle. My lungs burned, each inhale a fight against the sour, metallic tang clinging to the air. The old man didn't move from his stool. Instead, he reached under the counter and came up with a short wooden box. It looked ancient, hand-carved, the edges smoothed by decades of handling. "You shouldn't have answered it," he said, his voice low and even. "You didn't, did you?" I shook my head, my chest still heaving. "Good. That's the only reason you're still standing." He slid the box toward me. "They can mimic what you know. What you trust. They'll use the voices that matter most. Your brother, your mother, yourself. Never answer. Never follow. A deep thud shook the glass door. Something had pressed its weight against it, testing. I whispered, "What is it?" The old man's cloudy eyes locked on mine. "Old thing. Older than these trees. We call it a ye naldlushii. Skinwalker. It wears what it kills. Wears it until the skin rots, then finds another." Another thud, harder this time. The door shuddered in its frame. He slid the box open, revealing a handful of small objects, a pouch of gray powder, a carved bone, and a knife with a blade so black it seemed to swallow the light. "You keep this on you," he said, pressing the knife into my palm. "It won't kill it, but it'll make it think twice." I didn't have time to ask why. The door exploded inward, glass shards spraying across the floor. It ducked through the frame, the way a spider folds itself to pass through a crack. Up close, I could see the texture of its skin, patches of fur matted with something dark, veins crawling just beneath the surface. Its face was stretched, too tight over the bones, but the smile. The smile was mine. It spoke in my voice. "You can't run, Aaron." The old man stepped between us, scattering the gray powder in a wide arc. The thing stopped just short of it, tilting its head in a jerky, unnatural twitch. Its grin didn't fade. It backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact with me, until it was swallowed by the night outside. I stood frozen, my fingers clenched tight around the knife. The old man sighed. "It's not gone. It never leaves once it's marked you." The old man locked the splintered door as best he could, sliding a rusted bolt into place. "You've got until sunrise," he said. "That's when it fades back. But it'll be waiting the next night. And the next." I swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" "Just, never sleep again." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached under the counter, pulling out a faded map of the surrounding area. His trembling finger traced a route east, deep into the mountains. "There's a place it can't follow. Not for long. You get there before nightfall, you might buy yourself time." Might. Not will. I looked over my shoulder at the empty street outside. The air felt too still, like the town was holding its breath. "Where's Jake?" I asked, my voice shaking. The old man's gaze shifted, and in that flicker of hesitation, I knew he didn't have good news. If it took him, he stopped himself. Sometimes they keep them alive for a while. To learn the voice better. My stomach turned. He handed me the pouch of powder, the carved bone, and a battered set of truck keys. "Take my pickup. Don't stop for anything that talks." The truck was parked out back, its paint long since eaten away by sun and time. I climbed in, shoving the knife into my jacket pocket. The old man stood in the doorway, framed in the dim light. "Remember," he called after me. "It doesn't need to chase you in the daylight. But it will watch." I drove out of town as the first pale hints of morning touched the horizon. Every mile between me and the motel felt like a small victory, until I saw it. At first, I thought it was a deer on the side of the road, tall and still in the grass. But as I got closer, my stomach knotted. It was standing upright. Its head turned to follow me as I passed, its grin stretching impossibly wide. The sun's first light touched its skin, and I swore I saw it steaming, like heat rising from asphalt. I pressed harder on the gas, my hands slick on the wheel. It didn't move to follow. It didn't have to. Because when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw it again, standing in the road behind me, exactly as it had before. By the time the sun was fully above the trees, the road had narrowed to a cracked ribbon winding through pine and rock. I kept my eyes on the asphalt, telling myself not to check the mirror again. But the urge was like an itch I couldn't ignore. When I finally looked, my hands went cold. It was closer. Not running, not even walking, just standing in the middle of the road, but now only a few hundred yards back. No dust trail, no sign of movement. Like the distance between us had simply vanished. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Hours passed in that strange daylight haze where everything felt too quiet. No birdsong. No wind through the branches. Just the low growl of the truck's tired engine. I crested a hill, and the world ahead opened into a dry, empty stretch of desert. The old man's route led straight through it, 30 miles of flat land before the next tree line. That's when I saw it again. This time it wasn't behind me. It was standing in the middle of the road ahead. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming against the cracked pavement. The truck shuddered to a stop, dust curling up around it. The thing stood motionless in the heat shimmer, its shape rippling like the air itself was rejecting it. It lifted one hand, long fingers curling inward, and beckoned. I dropped the truck into reverse and floored it, the engine roaring as I backed up the hill. My eyes flicked to the mirror. Empty road. No. Something slammed into the side of the truck. The world tilted as the tires left the pavement, and the next thing I knew, I was skidding sideways into the ditch, the seatbelt cutting deep into my shoulder. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. My head rang. Somewhere outside, gravel crunched under slow, deliberate steps. I fumbled for the knife, my fingers numb and clumsy. The footsteps stopped just beside the driver's door. And then, through the shattered glass, Jake's face appeared. "Hey," he said, smiling faintly. "It's okay now. We can go home." My breath came in short, sharp bursts. Every instinct screamed don't believe it, but my chest ached at the sight of him. His hair was matted with dirt, his clothes torn, but his eyes, God, they looked exactly like Jake's. Same flecks of green. Same way they narrowed when he was trying to convince me of something. I tightened my grip on the knife. "Say something only Jake would know." He tilted his head. "Remember the summer you broke your arm? You cried all night because you thought Mom would be mad. I snuck you a candy bar from the freezer. My throat went dry. That happened when I was 7. I'd never told anyone else." "Come on, Aaron," he said, opening the door. His hand was warm when it gripped my arm, too warm, like the skin was feverish. "Let's get out of here before it comes back." He pulled, but I didn't move. "Why aren't you looking at me?" I asked. His smile froze, the corners twitching slightly. "I am." "No," I whispered. "You're looking over me." And just like that, the warmth of his grip turned ice cold. His face stayed the same, but the skin under my fingers felt wrong. Like wet leather stretched too thin. I drove the black blade up under his ribs. The thing wearing my brother hissed, the sound like steam escaping a boiling pot. Its face didn't change, but the eyes, those familiar green flecks, went black as tar. It jerked back, stumbling into the dust, and for the first time, I saw its body flicker. For a heartbeat, Jake's shape blurred into something taller, thinner, a mess of bone and sinew wrapped in ragged skin. Then it was gone, vanished into the shimmer of heat rising from the desert. My hands shook as I climbed out of the truck, the knife still slick with something that wasn't quite blood. The air was dead silent. Somewhere far off, a crow called once, sharp and sudden. I didn't know if I'd heard it. I didn't know if I'd even slowed it down. But I knew one thing. It wasn't done with me. The desert stretched out in every direction, flat, cracked earth scattered with brittle shrubs and the occasional boulder bleached white by the sun. The heat pressed down like a weight, making the horizon blur and ripple. The truck was totaled, one wheel bent inward, the engine coughing weakly before going silent for good. That left me with a backpack, the knife, the pouch of powder, and 30 miles of open ground before the tree line. The old man's words rang in my ears, "Don't stop for anything that talks." I started walking. For the first few miles, it was just the sound of my boots crunching on gravel and the faint whistle of wind over the flats. My shadow stretched long behind me, wavering in the heat. Then I heard the crunch of footsteps that weren't mine. I froze. The sound stopped too. Slowly, I turned. At first, the horizon behind me was empty, just the endless shimmer of heat rising from the ground. Then, a shape appeared in the distance. It wasn't moving, but somehow, I could feel its focus locked on me. Even from that far away, its head tilted in that slow, unnatural way, like it was studying me. I turned back and walked faster. The next time I glanced over my shoulder, it was closer. Still not walking. Still not running. Just closer. I started to jog, my breath rasping in the dry air. The sun burned my neck, sweat stinging my eyes. When I risked another look, it was even closer, maybe 100 yards now. It lifted one long arm, fingers splayed wide, and waved. I nearly tripped. My legs wanted to run flat out, but every survival instinct told me not to show fear. Not to give it the chase. I kept moving, heart hammering. That's when I heard it, Jake's voice, carried on the hot wind. "Slow down, Aaron. You'll get heatstroke." I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached. I didn't answer. But the voice didn't stop. It called again, louder this time. Then another voice joined in, my own. "You can't make it without us." The sound of my own voice, taunting me across the flats, was worse than the heat, worse than the distance. It felt like it was already inside my head. And for the first time, I wondered if that was exactly where it wanted to be. By midday, the heat had turned the air into a shimmering wall. Every breath scraped my throat raw. My skin felt like it was splitting under the sun. The tree line still looked impossibly far away, an illusion, maybe miles, maybe forever. My legs were lead, each step a battle to keep moving. That's when I saw the water. A thin, silver line glittering ahead, pooling at the base of a black rock formation. It looked so real I could almost hear it lapping against the stone. I didn't even think, I stumbled toward it, my tongue thick and dry. "Aaron," Jake's voice called, "close now. It's real. You're almost there." I slowed, knife in hand, scanning the horizon. The black rock jutted up like a jagged tooth, the water around it rippling in the sun. Something moved beneath the shimmer. At first it was just a distortion, like the heat waves had taken shape. Then I saw limbs, long, thin, moving in wrong angles as it unfolded from the ground. The water vanished in an instant, leaving nothing but cracked earth. The thing stood beside the rock, its head cocked, grin wide. "You're so tired," it said, in my voice now. "Just rest. You've been walking for hours. I'll keep watch." I backed away, heart pounding. The horizon wavered again, and for a second, I saw something else. My brother, tied and limp, slumped against the rock. His head lifted weakly. "Aaron, please. Help me." I blinked, and he was gone. The thing was still there, standing perfectly still, the shadow it cast stretching too far across the ground, bending toward me like a reaching arm. I turned and ran. The pounding in my ears was deafening, but beneath it, I thought I heard something following, without footsteps. Like the air itself was moving with me, closing in. When I dared a glance back, it wasn't behind me anymore. It was ahead. Just standing, grinning, waiting for me to catch up. I stopped so fast my knees nearly buckled. It was less than 50 feet away now, the heat shimmering around its body like it was warping the air. Behind it, the tree line still sat impossibly far, unchanged no matter how far I walked. The Skinwalker tilted its head again, a slow, jerky motion that made my stomach churn. Then it stepped forward, one deliberate, unnatural stride. The ground between us seemed to stretch and fold, like reality itself was being bent. I blinked, and it was suddenly closer, though I hadn't seen it take another step. "You're walking in circles," it said in Jake's voice. "Haven't you noticed? The road, the trees, they're all the same. I've been letting you wander." I glanced over my shoulder. My stomach dropped. There, far behind me, sat the wrecked truck, exactly as I'd left it. I'd been walking for hours, and gone nowhere. My throat tightened. "What do you want from me?" It didn't answer, at least, not with words. Its grin widened, lips peeling back to show those jagged, uneven teeth. The skin along its jaw rippled, like something underneath was pressing against it, trying to get out. Then it spoke again, but this time it didn't sound like Jake or me. It sounded like my mother. "Aaron, sweetheart," it cooed, the voice warm and familiar, "come here. You're lost. Let me help you." The sudden rush of emotion was so strong I took a step forward before I realized what I was doing. My grip on the knife loosened. It took a half step toward me, its body flickering, Jake, my mother, me, over and over, faster than I could process. The air felt heavier. Hotter. My chest ached, like the desert itself was crushing me into the ground. That's when I remembered the pouch of gray powder in my pack. With shaking hands, I ripped it open and flung a fistful at the ground between us. The powder hit the dirt and spread in an odd, unnatural way, like it was moving on its own. The thing stopped dead, its grin faltering for the first time. Its voice came low and guttural now, something ancient and hateful. "That won't save you." Then it began to circle, slow and deliberate, like a predator testing the edge of a cage. The powder's faint gray haze hung in the scorching air, creating a narrow barrier between me and the thing. It didn't try to cross, but it didn't retreat either. It moved along the curve of the circle I'd thrown, every step deliberate, its black eyes locked on mine. The longer I looked into them, the more I felt a weight pressing behind my thoughts, like it was trying to push its way inside. I backed up, slow, keeping my knife up and my eyes on it. My heel caught on loose rock, and I stumbled, dust puffing up around me. The Skinwalker stopped moving. It inhaled deeply, its chest rising and falling in exaggerated motions. Then, in my own voice again, it said, "You're bleeding." I glanced down. My knee had split open on the fall, a small stream of red dripping into the dirt. The creature's nostrils flared, and that grin returned, wider than ever. It crouched low, long fingers splayed in the dust, every muscle in its spindly frame tensing. The air between us seemed to twist. I realized something too late, the powder was already fading. Whatever strange force had held it in place was breaking apart in the dry wind, little flecks whisked away by the desert heat. It saw it too. In one impossible movement, it unfolded to its full, towering height and stepped forward, foot landing just inside the weakening line. My breath caught in my throat. The world around us seemed to dim, the sunlight thinning like clouds had rolled in, but the sky was still empty and blue. It took another step. The powder between us vanished completely. I turned and ran, not thinking, not looking back. My boots pounded the earth, the sound of my heartbeat drowning out everything, until something else joined in. Footsteps. Fast. Gaining. Then the heat shimmer ahead twisted again, and I saw trees. The tree line, suddenly only a few dozen yards away. It was a chance I didn't understand, but I didn't care. I sprinted for it, every muscle screaming. The moment my foot hit the shade, the sound behind me stopped. The air cooled instantly, the crushing weight lifting from my chest. I spun around. The Skinwalker stood at the very edge of the sunlight, just beyond the shadows of the trees. It wasn't grinning anymore. But its eyes told me it would wait. The forest swallowed the desert's glare, replacing it with the deep green gloom of towering pines. The air was cooler, damp with the smell of sap and moss. My lungs gulped it in greedily, but the relief was thin, like standing in the eye of a storm. I kept glancing back. The Skinwalker hadn't moved from the tree line, its silhouette stark against the sun-bleached desert. It didn't pace or twitch. It just stood there, head cocked, watching. Every instinct screamed not to trust the forest either. The ground here was soft with pine needles, muffling my footsteps as I pushed deeper between the trunks. The map the old man had given me said there was a narrow pass through these mountains, a place it can't follow. He hadn't explained why. After an hour of weaving between gnarled roots and low-hanging branches, I found something strange, a row of stones half buried in moss, running in a crooked line as far as I could see. They weren't natural, each one had symbols carved into its face, worn smooth with age. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. Somewhere ahead, a crow let out a single sharp call. Then another, closer. I tightened my grip on the knife and kept moving. The forest grew darker with every step, the canopy above knitting tighter, letting only thin spears of light through. That's when I heard it. Crunch. A footstep. Not mine. I froze, scanning the shadows between the trees. The sound came again, then again, moving in a slow arc around me. Jake. I called before I could stop myself. The forest went silent. Then, in my voice, just a few feet to my right. You're almost safe. My gut twisted. I swung toward the sound, knife raised, but there was nothing, just empty space and the faint rustle of leaves high above. I backed toward the stone line. My heel brushed one of the carved rocks, and that's when I saw it, just beyond the stones, half hidden behind a trunk, crouched low. It was inside the forest. And it was smiling again. The thing crouched just beyond the next tree, its long limbs folded in on themselves like a spider waiting to strike. One clawed hand rested lightly on the forest floor, the other dangling by its side, twitching in small, sharp jerks. I took a step back, my boot heel pressing against one of the moss-covered stones. The creature's head tilted slightly, eyes flicking down toward where I stood. It didn't move closer. Heart pounding, I tested a theory. I stepped sideways, keeping one foot behind the row of stones. The thing mirrored my movement but didn't cross the line. The old man's warning came back like a flash, there's a place it can't follow. I crouched quickly to study the stones. Up close, the carvings were clearer. Spirals, jagged lines, and crude figures, all etched deep into the rock. They looked old, older than the trees themselves. The Skinwalker shifted, restless now, its grin fading into a flat, hungry stare. It paced along the opposite side of the line, moving silently except for the faint crackle of leaves underfoot. And then I saw why it wasn't attacking. About 20 yards to my left, the row of stones ended abruptly. The rest were gone, swallowed by dirt and roots. A gap. The Skinwalker's head turned toward it at the same time I did. It straightened to its full height, joints popping audibly in the stillness. We both moved at once. I sprinted toward the break in the stone line, the forest whipping past in a blur of dark trunks and green shadow. Behind me came a burst of movement, snapping branches, tearing leaves, the sound of something impossibly fast closing in. The gap was only a few yards away when I saw it, another figure, stepping out from behind a tree. My brother. He looked wrong. His skin too pale, his movements too stiff. But his eyes, they were Jake's eyes. "Aaron," he shouted. "This way." I faltered for half a second, just enough for the crashing footsteps behind me to grow louder. I had to choose. I didn't trust the thing in front of me, not with the way its smile twitched at the edges, not with how it stood too still, like it was waiting for me to commit. Behind me, the real one, or the other one, was almost on me. I could hear its breaths now, wet, rattling, eager. Every muscle screamed move. Instead of running toward the Jake ahead, I dropped low and dove sideways into the underbrush, rolling hard over roots and rocks until I slammed against another of the carved stones. The forest erupted. The shape that had called my name twisted mid-step, its head snapping toward me with a neck too long to be human. The one behind me shrieked, a sound so sharp and layered it made my vision blur. They didn't cross the stone. One paced on the far side, dragging its claws through the dirt, gouging deep furrows. The other stood perfectly still, only its chest rising and falling in ragged bursts. Both had the same eyes now, flat, black, bottomless. I stayed crouched behind the stone, my breath coming in shallow, rapid pulls. The knife felt small in my hand, the only thing between me and whatever waited beyond these markers. Minutes, or hours, passed. The light shifted, turning the green canopy above into a murky gold. The air grew colder. Then, without warning, both figures turned in unison and walked back into the shadows. Gone. The silence that followed was almost worse. I didn't move until the sun dipped low, staining the treetops in orange. My only thought was to keep following the line of stones deeper into the forest, praying they stayed unbroken. But as the darkness thickened, I found another gap. This one was wide. 10 feet at least, the stones on either side half buried in the soil, their carvings nearly worn away. Something shifted in the shadows beyond the gap. And then, from the darkness, came my voice. It's safe now, Aaron. You can step through. The last of the daylight bled away, leaving the forest wrapped in a dense, blue-black shadow. The stones at my feet seemed to dim with it, their carvings harder to see, as if the darkness was eating them away. Beyond the gap, my voice called again, warmer this time, coaxing. Come on. You're tired. Cold. I'll walk with you. A faint rustle followed, like something shifting just out of sight. The air was heavier now, thick with the smell of damp earth and something sour, metallic, blood, faint but unmistakable. I gripped the knife tighter and stepped back from the gap. My instincts screamed that the stones were weaker now, that the thing knew it, and that it was waiting for the moment they stopped mattering. Branches creaked overhead, and I realized the forest had gone dead silent. No insects, no wind, nothing. And then a shape moved through the gap. Not a full step, just one arm, impossibly long, stretching across the invisible boundary. Its hand splayed wide, each finger tipped with a dark, hooked claw. The skin was pale and thin, veins like black threads crawling beneath it. The claws scraped the dirt, slow and deliberate, leaving deep furrows that ended inches from my boots. The voice came again, closer now, my brother's this time. You think the rocks will save you? They won't. I'll wait here. I'll wait until you're too hungry to keep going. Until you're too tired to care. The arm withdrew, vanishing into the shadows, but the feeling of its presence lingered like a cold hand on the back of my neck. I started walking again, following the stones, moving faster now. My head kept turning toward the dark beyond the line, expecting to see it pacing me. But I didn't. And somehow, that was worse. Because it meant it didn't need to follow. It already knew where I was going. The stones led me into a part of the forest where the trees grew so close together their trunks touched, sealing off the sky. It felt like walking down the throat of something alive, narrow, damp, the air pressing in from all sides. After what felt like hours, the path opened into a wide clearing. The sudden space made me uneasy, like stepping into the center of a stage with every shadow watching. In the middle stood a massive stone pillar, twice my height, its surface carved with the same spirals and jagged figures as the smaller boundary stones. Moss clung to its base, but the top was bare, as though nothing dared grow there. The air here felt different. Lighter, but charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I stepped closer, running my fingers over the carvings. They were deeper than I expected, the grooves sharp despite centuries of weather. My hand tingled as I traced one of the spirals, almost like static shock. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Not from outside the clearing, but from the stone itself. It wasn't words, not exactly, more like the shape of words. The rhythm was wrong, but my brain kept trying to make sense of it, twisting the sounds until I swore I heard my own name buried inside. I backed away, my pulse climbing. From the tree lean came a faint shuffle of movement. I turned to see a shape just beyond the carvings, standing between the trees. It wasn't grinning. It just stared at the pillar, tilting its head slowly to one side, like an animal wary of something stronger than itself. The voice that came from its mouth wasn't mine, or Jake's, or my mother's. It was old. Low. And it shook the air around it. That stone isn't for you. It stepped closer, stopping right at the edge of the clearing. The grass between us seemed to wither, curling into black strands. It's for me. The thing lingered at the clearing's edge, the shadows clinging to it like oil. Its eyes never left the stone pillar, but I felt its attention pressing against me, heavy, probing, like cold fingers running along the inside of my skull. The carvings on the pillar began to hum. Not loud, but deep, the kind of sound you feel more than hear. My ribs vibrated with it, my teeth aching. The Skinwalker flinched at the noise. Just barely. But it was enough. You can't cross, I said, my voice shaking. Its head snapped toward me, and for the first time, it smiled without taking a step forward. Stones crumble. People break. The hum grew stronger, the spirals and jagged symbols seeming to writhe under the thin film of moss. I could almost see the grooves shift, the lines crawling like worms just beneath the surface. In my head, a new thought surfaced, not mine, but as clear as if I'd spoken it myself. Give it blood. I stepped back, shaking my head. No. The voice came again, insistent. Blood for protection. Yours or theirs. My stomach nodded. I gripped the knife tighter, my palm slick with sweat. The Skinwalker's grin widened, teeth gleaming even in the dim light. It seemed to know what I was hearing. Cut yourself, it whispered, in Jake's voice now. Pour it out on the stone. We'll both be free. I glanced at the pillar, at the shifting lines and spirals, and I realized the whisper from earlier wasn't a warning. It was a bargain. Blood would strengthen the boundary. But blood would also mark me. The hum was turning into a pulse now, each throb echoing in my chest. The air smelled sharper, like ozone and copper. The Skinwalker stepped to the very edge of the clearing. One more inch and it would be inside. I had to decide, feed the stone and hope it would hold, or run and pray the forest gave me another way out. My hand hovered over the knife. The hum from the stone was so deep now it felt like it was inside my bones, syncing with my heartbeat, urging me to act. The Skinwalker's shape flickered at the edge of the clearing, Jake, my mother, myself, cycling faster and faster, as if every face it had stolen was being paraded in front of me. Choose, Aaron, it said, in all the voices at once. The pressure behind my eyes was unbearable. I couldn't think straight. My legs moved on their own, carrying me to the base of the pillar. I lifted the knife. My reflection in the blackened blade looked like a stranger, sunburnt, filthy, hollow-eyed. The stone's whispers grew louder, overlapping until they formed something that almost sounded like chanting. I pressed the edge to my palm. The steel bit into my skin, hot and sharp. Blood welled up instantly. The moment it hit the stone, the carvings flared, dim at first, then bright enough to burn spots into my vision. The hum turned into a roar. The air shuddered. The Skinwalker staggered back a step, its body jerking like it was being yanked on invisible strings. It snarled, a sound that rattled the leaves in the tree lean, and for the first time, I saw fear in those black eyes. But then, it smiled again. And in my own voice, it whispered, "Now I can find you anywhere." The light from the stone dimmed slightly. Not much, but enough for the thing to lean forward again, testing the boundary like an animal prodding a cage. The whispers in my head didn't stop. They'd changed. No longer a bargain, but a tether, pulsing faintly, like the stone was still feeding on me. I stepped back from it, clutching my bleeding hand. My stomach twisted as I realized the truth. The stone hadn't just kept the Skinwalker out. It had tied us together. I backed away from the pillar, keeping my eyes on the Skinwalker. It didn't lunge, didn't claw at the air. It just paced the tree line now, moving with a strange, almost lazy confidence. The bleeding in my palm hadn't stopped. Every few seconds, the stone behind me pulsed in time with my heartbeat, sending a faint vibration up through my feet. The tether was real, I could feel it, stretching between me and the thing like an invisible cord. I turned and slipped back into the narrow path between the trees, following the line of stones deeper into the forest. My pace was quick at first, then faster when I heard the leaves moving inside the boundary. I froze. Something was moving with me now. It wasn't loud. The soft scrape of claws on bark, the faint crunch of pine needles underfoot, but it was inside. The stones weren't keeping it out anymore. My stomach dropped. I picked up speed, weaving between the trunks, eyes scanning the shadows for movement. The carvings on the stones I passed were faint now, their grooves almost worn smooth. A branch snapped somewhere ahead. I skidded to a stop, knife in my good hand, my other still dripping blood onto the forest floor. A shape emerged from between two trees, not the Skinwalker, not exactly. It was smaller. Lopsided. Its limbs didn't match in length, and its skin hung loose, stitched together from scraps. Its head jerked toward me, and I realized it was wearing two faces at once, shifting between them like water boiling over a flame. It opened its mouth, and both faces spoke together. The stone opened the door. Before I could react, it lunged. It came at me in a blur of jerking limbs and snapping jaws, faster than anything that broken-looking should have been. I barely had time to sidestep, slashing with the knife as it passed. The blade bit deep into its side, but instead of blood, a black, tar-like fluid splattered across the pine needles. The thing shrieked, high, piercing, layered with too many voices at once, and hit the ground, skidding in the dirt. It didn't stay down. It twisted upright, body bending in ways that made my stomach turn. Its arms elongated with a wet pop, claws raking the ground as it stalked toward me again. The smell coming off it was overpowering, rotten iron, thick enough to taste. Every instinct told me to run, but the path was narrow and the stones on either side felt like they were fading by the second. If I turned my back, it would be on me before I could take 2 steps. It lunged again, but this time I met it head-on, ramming the knife up under its jaw. The black blade sank deep, and for a moment, its entire body seized, faces flickering faster, each one stretched and twisted in pain. Then the tether pulled. It wasn't physical, but it felt like something was yanking my insides toward it, my vision tunneling, my breath leaving my body in a rush. Images flashed behind my eyes, desert, motel, Jake's face, then darkness. When my sight cleared, the creature was gone. Only the black fluid on the ground proved it had been there. The tether still pulsed in my chest. Stronger now. Somewhere deeper in the forest, I heard the Skinwalker laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was pleased. The laugh echoed long after it should have faded, slithering through the trees until I couldn't tell which direction it came from. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It felt inside. I pressed my uninjured hand to my chest, as if I could smother the tether's pull. The connection throbbed like a second heartbeat, stronger than before the fight. The stones along the path were different now. Some had gone almost completely smooth, their carvings erased as though the forest itself had aged 100 years in seconds. The air here was colder, and every shadow felt like it was leaning toward me. I kept walking, slow and careful, scanning both sides of the path. That's when I realized something that stopped me cold. The forest was silent. No wind. No rustle of leaves. Even the sound of my own footsteps seemed dampened. The only thing I could hear was the faint hum of the tether. It was leading me. Not forward. Backward. The path was curving in on itself, just like the desert had. The stones were still here, still forming a boundary, but the forest beyond them wasn't the same. It shifted when I wasn't looking, shapes bending and twisting just out of sight. And somewhere in that darkness, I caught glimpses of movement. Not the Skinwalker. Not the stitched thing I'd fought. Others. Pale, hunched shapes, some crawling on all fours, some dragging themselves along the ground. Their eyes reflected faintly in the dim light, all fixed on me. The tether pulsed again, harder, and I understood, each of them was connected now. Fragments. Leftovers. All pulling from the same thread tied to me. And the one holding the other end, was getting closer. I stopped in the middle of the path, chest heaving. The tether thrummed in my ribs, pulling like a hooked wire buried deep in my sternum. Every beat told me the same thing, it's coming. I gripped the black knife, the only thing that had made it flinch before, and pressed the edge against the cut in my palm. If the stone had tied me to it through blood, maybe blood could sever it too. The forest seemed to lean in, waiting. Even the hunched shapes in the shadows had gone still, their eyes reflecting like shards of ice. I pressed harder until fresh blood welled up, dripping down the blade. The instant it touched the steel, the tether pulled hard. The world around me twisted, trees stretching taller, shadows deepening until they swallowed the light. The stones were gone. The forest floor beneath my boots warped into cracked, black earth. And it was there. Not at the edge this time. Not a fragment. The Skinwalker. Up close, its true shape was worse than I'd imagined. Taller than any man, limbs too long, torso caved in as if something had crushed it long ago. Its skin was stretched over bones so tightly it looked ready to split, and beneath the thin membrane, shapes moved, faces pressing against the surface, their mouths silently screaming. Its head tilted in that slow, deliberate way, and those bottomless black eyes locked on me. "You wanted to cut the string," it said, the words like wet cloth tearing. So here we are. The tether between us burned white-hot, and I realized it wasn't just a connection anymore. It was a path. One it could use both ways. The ground beneath me rippled like liquid tar, sucking at my boots. I tried to step back, but the tether pulled again, harder this time, yanking me forward a half step toward the thing. It didn't move to close the distance. It didn't need to. The space between us was shrinking without either of us taking a step, the blackened earth folding in on itself, drawing me closer. The faces under its skin shifted faster now, some I recognized, Jake, my mother, my own reflection, and others I didn't. They pressed harder against the membrane, distorting it, as though trying to push their way out through its body. "You're already inside," it said, and as it spoke, its voice multiplied. I heard it from its mouth, from behind me, from inside my own skull. I raised the knife and tried to force my legs to move, to attack before it closed the gap completely. But my body felt heavy, every motion slow and dreamlike, as if the tether was pulling at my muscles as well as my mind. Its grin widened. "Cut if you like. You're cutting into yourself now." I looked down. The black knife in my hand was buried halfway into my own chest. There was no pain, just a strange cold spreading out from the wound, sinking into my ribs. My fingers went numb, the knife almost slipping from my grip. The Skinwalker stepped closer, its feet making no sound against the cracked earth. The air around it wavered, bending like heat haze, and that cold in my chest deepened until I could feel it in my spine. It crouched so we were eye level. The smell of rot rolled off it, thick enough to choke on. "I could take you now," it whispered, "but where's the fun in that?" Its clawed hand reached forward, not to strike, but to touch. The tips barely grazed my cheek, and every nerve in my body screamed. The world snapped back into the forest. The stones were under my feet again, my boots damp with pine needles. The wound in my chest was gone, but the cold remained, coiled deep inside me like something sleeping. And from somewhere behind the trees, the Skinwalker's laugh followed. Low. Patient. It wasn't finished. I stood there, shivering in the dark, though the night air was barely cool. The cold inside me was worse than the forest chill. It felt alive, like a breath on the back of my ribs, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. The tether was different now. Before, it had been a pull in one direction, the Skinwalker's direction. Now it pulsed both ways, a faint throb that carried not just where it was, but impressions, flashes of sound, movement, and hunger. I knew it was in the forest, pacing slowly, dragging its claws over bark just to hear the sound. And I knew it could feel me standing here, every beat of my heart, every shaky breath. Somewhere far off, a branch cracked. Not loud, but the tether sharpened instantly, like a cord pulled taut, and I felt it turn its head toward me. I moved, fast, following the stones deeper. The path curved, dipping into a ravine where the moonlight barely touched the ground. I thought I was alone until I saw a flicker of movement ahead. A figure crouched over something on the forest floor. The tether didn't react to it. That was almost worse. I crept closer, knife ready. The smell hit first, sweet and metallic. Blood. The figure straightened slowly, its back to me. Long, tangled hair. Torn flannel shirt, jeans stiff with dark stains. It turned its head, just enough for me to see its profile. Jake. But the tether was silent. Which meant whatever I was looking at, wasn't part of it. Jake. My voice came out hoarse, half-broken from hours of not speaking. He didn't answer. The figure stayed crouched, head tilted like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. His shoulders moved in short, sharp twitches, not breathing, not really. I took a step closer, the knife angled low but ready. If it's you, you need to say something only Jake would know. Slowly, he stood. Not fast, not inhuman, just slow enough to make the silence stretch like a wire about to snap. When he turned to face me, my gut nodded. It was Jake. The shape of his face, the scar under his left eyebrow, the chipped front tooth from when he fell off his bike at 11. But his eyes, they weren't black like the Skinwalker's. They were pale, cloudy, like river ice. He opened his mouth. Aaron. It was his voice, but flat, hollow, like it was traveling from far away. The tether inside me stayed dead quiet. That silence was almost worse than the pull. It meant this thing wasn't bound to the Skinwalker. But that didn't mean it was safe. What are you? I asked. His lips twitched, like he was trying to remember how to smile. Not, it. My grip on the knife tightened. That's not an answer. He glanced over my shoulder, toward the stones lining the path, then back at me. You don't have much time. It's moving. It's. He stopped. His head jerked sharply, eyes going wide like something had grabbed his attention, or control. Then, without warning, he bolted into the trees. I didn't follow. Because the tether had just flared hot in my chest. It was close. The tether yanked hard, a sudden, hot pulse under my ribs that made my knees almost buckle. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was hunting. I spun toward the deeper part of the forest, scanning the darkness between the trunks. The stones were still there on either side of the path, but they looked weaker, fewer carvings, some cracked, some sunk halfway into the dirt. Whatever power they had was fading fast. A faint scrape came from my right. Not the snap of a twig or the rustle of leaves, this was deliberate. Claws against bark. Slow. Taunting. The tether pulled again, sharper this time, like it wanted to guide my head toward the sound. And when I let it, my eyes landed on a gap between two massive pines. Something stood there. Tall. Thin. Still. The black eyes locked on me, unblinking, and even from here I could see its chest rise and fall, not from breathing, but from the slow, rolling motion of whatever else was inside its skin. It stepped into the path without hesitation. The stones didn't stop it. I backed up, my boots slipping in the pine needles. If it could cross now, my only chance was to slow it down, force it into terrain it couldn't move through easily. The ravine. To my left, the ground dipped sharply into a rocky chute choked with fallen logs and thick brambles. I'd passed it earlier, too steep to climb quickly, but it had only one way in and out. If I could get it down there, I could buy myself time. I turned and ran. The forest exploded behind me, branches snapping, dirt scattering as it came after me, the sound wrong for how fast it was moving. The tether burned like fire now. And in my head, a voice whispered, "Run faster." The ravine came into view in jagged flashes between the trees. A black slash in the earth, the brambles below shifting in the windless dark. I didn't slow down. My boots hit the slope, sending loose dirt and stones tumbling ahead of me. Gravity yanked me forward, the descent faster than I wanted, but I knew if I hesitated it would be on me. The tether seared, each pulse in my chest sinking with the pounding of claws behind me. Halfway down, I threw myself sideways into the thicket, letting the brambles swallow me whole. Thorns bit into my arms and face, but I forced myself deeper until I could barely move without tearing skin. I crouched low, breath shallow, knife in my hand. The sound of its approach slowed at the edge of the slope. No heavy footfalls now, just a slow, deliberate scrape of claws over stone. It was looking. The tether burned white-hot, and for a moment, I swore I felt its thoughts pressing against mine. Images flickered, my hiding place from above, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. It knew I was here. Still, it came down. The sound of its limbs moving through the ravine was wrong, too many joints bending in too many directions, like it was folding itself around obstacles instead of climbing over them. The brambles rustled as it drew closer, and the smell of rot thickened until it was all I could taste. I tightened my grip on the knife, waiting for the moment it would push through the last layer of thorn and be close enough to strike. But the movement stopped. Silence. Then, right in front of me, a pale hand slid through the thorns, slowly, gently, and pressed its palm against my chest, right over the tether's burn. My vision went black. The darkness wasn't empty. Shapes moved in it, tall, spindly silhouettes pacing in slow arcs, their heads snapping toward me when I tried to focus on them. Their eyes glowed faintly, like embers under ash. The ground beneath me was soft, almost spongy, and when I shifted my weight, it pulsed, once, twice, like a heartbeat underfoot. The tether was no longer in my chest. It was everywhere. Threads stretched out from my body in all directions, vanishing into the dark. Some were taut, others slack, but each one vibrated faintly with movement, as if something was crawling along them toward me. A voice came from behind. Not loud. Not urgent. Just, close. "You're inside my hunt now." I turned. The Skinwalker stood a few feet away, but not in its usual human mimicry. Here, in this place, it didn't need to wear a mask. Its body was stretched to impossible proportions, the limbs almost too thin to hold its weight. Its head was a skull-like wedge, the face a shifting smear of mouths and eyes. Every time it moved, the ground under it seemed to sink. It reached out, and one of the tether threads slid into its hand like fishing line. With a sharp tug, something at the far end screamed, high and short, and went silent. That, it said, was one of mine. I tried to step back, but the threads pulled tight around my ankles, rooting me to the ground. It tilted its head. "You don't understand. The tether isn't a chain." It leaned closer, its many mouths grinning. "It's a net." The threads around me began to shiver. One by one, shapes emerged from the dark at the far ends, half-formed things crawling toward the center. Some had faces, others didn't. A few looked almost human until they moved, revealing the jerks and spasms of broken joints. Each one was tied to me. The Skinwalker walked among the threads, brushing its claws along them. Every touch sent a jolt into my chest, as if the tether was wired straight into my nerves. When it plucked one sharply, a figure at the other end convulsed, shrieked, and dissolved into black vapor. "You feel that?" it asked. "Every one of them is a piece of me. A piece of you now, too." "I don't want them," I said, the words shaky but forced out. It laughed, a sound like cracking bone. "Want? It doesn't matter what you want. The moment your blood touched the stone, you stepped into my circle. You feed it. You feed me." The threads tightened, pulling me slightly forward. My boots sank deeper into the spongy ground, that slow heartbeat underfoot growing stronger. The Skinwalker crouched in front of me, claws resting lightly on the nearest cord between us. "You could pluck them, too," it said, almost sweetly. "Call them to you. Make them do things. Tear them apart. All you'd have to do is, try." Images flashed unbidden in my mind, those pale shapes tearing through the forest at my command, their claws shredding through whatever I pointed them at. I tried to shove the thought away, but the tether liked it. I could feel it humming hotter, pulling tighter. The Skinwalker leaned closer until the black pits of its eyes filled my vision. "You'll use it," it whispered. "You'll use it, and when you do, you'll be mine." "I'll never use it," I said. It didn't come out as strong as I wanted, it sounded thin, fragile, but I forced the words into the dark between us. The Skinwalker's grin didn't fade. Instead, it straightened slowly, impossibly tall in this place, and with one sharp flick of its claw, it plucked the thread tied deepest into my chest. Agony ripped through me, white-hot and sudden, like my ribcage was being pried apart from the inside. My knees buckled, but the cords around my ankles held me upright. The shapes at the far end. I struggled against the bindings, but every movement only seemed to sink me deeper into the pulsing ground. The Skinwalker circled me like a predator testing its prey. "You think you're strong enough to say no. But here, in my ground, I decide what you are." One of the shapes reached me first, its hands gripping the tether so tightly the cords cut into its pale flesh. Its head jerked up, and I saw my own face staring back at me, stretched and wrong. It lunged. Pure instinct took over. My hand shot out and yanked the thread connecting it to me. The thing froze mid-leap, its body convulsing, then shattered into black vapor that dissolved into the air. The Skinwalker's laughter was instant, sharp and triumphant. "See? You'll use it." The humming in the tether didn't fade this time, it grew, feeding on what I'd done, pulling tighter around me like it was claiming me. And somewhere in the Real forest, far away from this black place, I felt my own body take a breath that wasn't mine. The laugh still echoed when the blackness around me began to thin. The shapes, the threads, the pulsing ground, all of it bled away into the dim moonlight of the forest. I was back in the ravine. But something was wrong. My vision didn't sit right, edges warped slightly, shadows clinging where they shouldn't. The cold in my chest had spread to my arms, my legs, like frost creeping under my skin. And then I moved. Not by choice. My head turned toward the slope, toward the trees above, as if I'd just spotted something. My fingers flexed around the knife, not in readiness, but in testing the grip. I could feel my muscles tightening, my body shifting into a crouch, movements I wasn't commanding. The tether pulsed, and I knew. It was inside me. Not fully, not yet, but enough to nudge me, to see through my eyes, to try on my movements like a coat it planned to wear. I fought it, pushing back against each subtle command, straighten the shoulders, take a step forward, turn the wrist. But every time I resisted, it pushed harder. The cold in my veins deepened, and a pressure grew in the back of my skull, like something was curling up there, waiting for me to give out. From somewhere above the ravine, I heard a rustle of leaves. Then a voice. "Aaron?" It was Jake again. But this time, the tether flared at the sound of his name. The Skinwalker wanted me to go to him. Jake's voice carried down into the ravine, soft but urgent. I gripped the brambles to steady myself, forcing my legs to stay rooted even as the tether pulsed harder, yanking me toward the slope like a hooked fish. My mouth opened. Not because I wanted to speak, but because it wanted to. Jake, the word came out strained, drawn out, not quite my voice. Every muscle in my body ached from the effort of resisting. My fingers twitched on the knife hilt, wanting to loosen, to drop it. I clenched harder until the handle dug into my palm, reopening the cut. Warm blood slid down my wrist. The tether shivered. It liked that. Above, leaves shifted. I caught a flash of movement, someone leaning over the edge of the ravine. The moonlight touched his face. Jake. And yet, not. His skin was pale in a way that wasn't just light, and his eyes caught the moonlight wrong, glinting like an animal's. The cold in my chest surged, and my feet took a step toward him. My hand rose, not to wave, not to reach, but to offer. Somewhere deep inside, I realized what it was trying to do. If Jake took my hand, the tether would have two anchors. I dug my heels into the dirt and snarled through gritted teeth, not yours. The cold inside me twisted in anger, and the pressure in my skull flared until my vision swam. Jake, whatever version of him this was, cocked his head. Then he smiled. Jake's smile didn't reach his eyes. I told you it was coming for you, he said, voice calm, too calm. But you didn't listen. The tether throbbed at the sound of his voice, almost in agreement. I shook my head, trying to keep my focus sharp, to keep me in control. What are you talking about? How do you? I've felt it longer than you, he cut in. Years. Before you even knew what it was. That cold in my chest seemed to lean toward him, like a plant toward sunlight. My body wanted to move closer, but I locked my knees, forcing myself still. You're lying, I said, but it came out weak. Jake's smile widened. You think it only hunts strangers? It's been inside me since I was 12. Since the night we got lost on the ridge. My stomach dropped. That night. We'd both brushed it off as being turned around in the dark, but Jake had been different afterward, quieter, older somehow, in a way I couldn't name at the time. It's patient, he went on. It doesn't take you all at once. It lets you live. It lets you carry it. His eyes flicked to my chest. And now it's in you, too. The tether flared between us, a hot, electric pull, and I realized it wasn't just connecting me to it anymore. It was connecting me to him. Jake's voice softened. You can fight it. Or you can use it. But if you fight it, you'll lose. Above us, something in the trees shifted. Heavy. Watching. The Skinwalker was near. And it was letting this play out. The movement in the trees stopped, but the weight of its attention stayed. I didn't need to see it to know, it was listening. Jake took a slow step down the slope toward me. The tether snapped tight, heat surging through it, through me. My grip on the knife trembled. I can feel it watching, Jake said, voice low. It wants us to link. To feed it faster. I shook my head hard, but the motion felt sluggish, like the air had thickened around me. If we do that, it won't stop. It'll burn through us. Jake's eyes narrowed. You don't get it. We're already burned. The only choice left is how. The tether pulsed between us. Steady, slow, deliberate. Not dragging this time. Inviting. My mind flickered back to the black place inside its hunt, to the threads I'd seen stretching into the dark. If we linked, I knew it would be like tying two spiderwebs together. Twice as many lines. Twice as many things caught in them. Behind Jake, a shadow shifted against the trunk of a pine. For a second, its eyes flashed, black pits that swallowed the moonlight whole. Jake saw it too. His voice sharpened. If we don't do this, it'll just take you like it took me. Piece by piece. You'll wake up one day and it won't be you walking around anymore. The tether pulsed harder now, like a heartbeat speeding up. I could feel its hunger bleeding through. Jake took another step down, close enough that his boots slid in the loose dirt. We link, we might be able to turn it back on itself. Starve it. Or feed it. I didn't know which would happen. And the Skinwalker was waiting for my answer. The air felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Jake's hand hovered just inches from mine, the tether between us vibrating so hard I swore I could hear it, a low, thrumming hum in my ears. If I took his hand, the connection would lock. I could feel it, the same way you can feel the ocean pulling at your ankles before a wave hits. I thought about the stone, about the way the carvings writhed when my blood touched it. About the shapes tied to me in that black hunting ground, waiting for a command. If we linked, we'd have more lines to pull. Or we'd give it everything at once. I reached out anyway. The instant our hands met, heat blasted through the tether, so hot it was almost sound, a rushing, roaring pressure that knocked the breath out of me. My vision split, doubling, then tripling, until I was seeing through two sets of eyes at once. Jake's heartbeat pounded alongside mine. His fear, his anger, they were in me, just as my thoughts flooded into him. The tether went silent for half a second. Then it laughed. Not in the trees. Not outside. Inside. The sound coiled through our shared link, vibrating in our bones. Good, it said, the voice filling every space in my head. Now we can begin. The forest shifted around us, trees warping taller, the stones sinking into the earth like they'd never been there. The brambles at the ravine's edge withered, curling into ash. We weren't in the same forest anymore. And we weren't alone. Shapes moved in the tree line. Dozens of them. The Skinwalker had been waiting for this. The shapes emerged from the tree line one by one, pale bodies hunched and twitching, some crawling, some lurching upright on unsteady legs. Their eyes caught the dim light, milky, hollow, and each of them carried a thread, glistening and taut, leading straight into the tether between me and Jake. I could feel them now. Not just their presence, but their movements, the twitch of each claw, the scrape of each footstep. My mind was flooded with alien sensations, cold dirt under their nails, the ache of empty stomachs, the itch of skin that didn't fit right. Jake felt them too. I knew because his grip on my hand tightened until my knuckles ached. They're waiting, he said, voice low, teeth clenched. In the space between our thoughts, the Skinwalker's voice slid in like oil. Pull them. And the horrifying part was that I knew exactly how. The threads weren't just connections, they were leashes. I could tighten them, jerk them forward, make them rush us or drive them back into the dark. One of the creatures stepped forward on its own, its head lolling to the side. Its mouth opened, and my own voice came out of it. You can't fight forever. Jake flinched, and through the tether, I felt the jolt of his panic. That fear made the connection stronger, a quick surge that sent all the shapes rippling closer. The Skinwalker was feeding on this, on our emotions, our confusion. The clearing around us seemed to shrink, trees bending inward. The air was heavy with the smell of rot and wet stone. The tether between me and Jake thrummed harder, and in the distance, I caught a glimpse of it. Watching. Waiting. Not attacking, because this was still the hunt. And we had just stepped deep into its center. The fragments circled, their movements ragged but deliberate, like wolves waiting for a signal. Every time one shifted closer, I felt the tug through the tether, a faint pull in my mind, like a thought trying to form. If I focused, I could push it back. If I didn't, it inched forward. Jake's breathing was harsh in my head, louder than in my ears. You feel that too? I thought. Yeah. His mental voice was tight, controlled. If we push at the same time, we can keep them off us. We tried. The nearest shape staggered, their claws flexing in the dirt as if fighting an unseen current. But the effort burned like holding my breath under scalding water, and I knew we couldn't hold it forever. The Skinwalker's voice slid between us again. Command them. Take them. Make them yours. The tether pulsed hotter, and I realized it wasn't just giving us the ability to push, it was tempting us to pull. One thought and they'd rush forward. One thought and they'd rip apart whatever we pointed them at. Jake's grip tightened. I think if we pull all at once, we could send them at it. My gut twisted. That was exactly what it wanted. But in the same breath, I knew if we didn't act, they'd close in on us anyway, and when they did, there'd be no stopping them. The fragments slowed, sensing our hesitation. They were waiting for the command. Jake's voice, inside and out, was sharp. Aaron, now. I yanked. Every thread between me and the circling shapes went taut at once, vibrating with a deep, bone-level hum that rattled my teeth. The fragments reacted instantly. Spines snapping straight, heads jerking toward the tree lean where the Skinwalker waited. Then they charged. The ground shook under the pounding of dozens of mismatched limbs. The air filled with the wet slap of bare feet, the tearing scrape of claws through dirt. Through the tether, I felt them hit the tree line, impact after impact, bodies colliding with bark, claws ripping at shadows. Jake and I pushed together, driving them forward, trying to funnel every ounce of their rage at it. And then something else moved with them. It wasn't one of the pale, twitching bodies. It was faster, smoother, cutting between them in a blur. I barely saw it before it was gone, but I felt it in the tether like a sudden spike of ice water in my veins. One thread. Hidden. Coiled tighter than the rest. By the time I realized it wasn't mine to control, it had already turned. I saw it coming, low, fast, weaving through the chaos. The fragments didn't touch it. Some even moved aside, letting it pass. It broke through the ring, rushing straight for me and Jake. Not a fragment. A piece of it. The Skinwalker had hidden itself in the middle of our own strike. It closed the distance in seconds, a smear of pale limbs and black eyes, low to the ground like a hunting cat. The tether between me and Jake screamed with pressure, heat surging up my spine, filling my skull with static. Cut it, Jake's voice slammed into my head, raw with panic. Now. I didn't think. I found the thread in the web, tight, cold, thrumming wrong, and wrapped my mind around it like gripping a rope. It bucked against me, fighting to stay connected, but I yanked hard, willing it to break. The sound it made wasn't sound at all. It was a snap inside my bones, a flash of nausea so strong my vision blacked out for half a heartbeat. When I could see again, the thing was already stumbling mid-charge. Its body convulsed like it had been hit with a jolt of electricity. Jake pushed through the tether, adding force to mine. Together, we tore the thread in two. The connection severed. The Skinwalker's fragment crumpled in the dirt, twitching violently. Its limbs folded at impossible angles, joints collapsing inward until the body was no longer shaped like anything human, or animal. Then it dissolved into the same black vapor I'd seen in the hunting ground, vanishing into the air. The rest of the fragments faltered, confusion rippling through their movements. Without that hidden piece guiding them, their charge turned chaotic, some running in circles, others clawing at each other. The Skinwalker's voice oozed through the tether, calm and patient. Better. You're learning. The trees at the edge of the clearing shifted. Something huge moved there, just out of sight. Watching. Waiting for the next move. Jake's hand was still locked in mine, trembling. We can't do that again, he said. Not without it taking more from us. The tether between us pulsed in agreement. The fragments staggered at the edges of the clearing, milling like restless cattle, but none dared cross closer without a push. The Skinwalker didn't call them back. It didn't need to. It was letting them linger, just far enough away to keep us tense, just close enough that we couldn't forget they were there. The tether between Jake and me throbbed steadily now, not burning, not freezing, just there. A constant, slow pull that felt less like an intrusion and more like a habit. That scared me worse than the pain. It's making us keep it, I thought, pushing the words toward Jake. I know. His mental voice was hoarse, drained. If we hold the threads long enough, we won't want to let them go. He was right. Even now, I could feel the lure, the sense of power coiling in the web, the way my thoughts could ripple outward and stir every shape in the clearing. And somewhere deeper in the trees, I felt its mind brush against mine. Not pushing. Not speaking. Just waiting. A cold realization sank into my gut. It wasn't trying to break us. It was trying to make us choose. If we stepped forward, if we called the fragments again, it would be because we wanted to. That choice would be the thing that sealed us. The air thickened, the smell of rot and damp soil pressing in. The fragments began to sway on their feet, restless, muttering in voices too soft to make out. Jake's grip tightened. If we stay here, we'll give in. It's just a matter of time. The tether pulsed once, like a heartbeat, in answer. Jake's words settled heavy in my skull, but the tether made it hard to think. Every pulse was slower now, deeper, like a heartbeat echoing through water. And underneath it, I could feel the pull of the fragments, a gnawing curiosity to see what they'd do if I just tugged. I clenched my jaw, forcing the thought out. We have to cut it, I said. Completely. No threads, no link. Jake didn't answer right away. I felt him turning the idea over in his head, the way his unease spiked at the edges. You don't know what that'll do to us. I know what happens if we don't. The tether between us gave a slow, deliberate throb, like it had heard, and was smiling. I scanned the clearing. The fragments shifted and muttered in the shadows, but none crossed closer. The Skinwalker was still out there, beyond the trees, letting this moment stretch. It wanted to see what we'd do. Jake's voice came into my head again, quieter now. If we cut it, we're not just cutting it out of us. We're cutting out everything it's tied to. Good, I said. No, you don't get it. That means cutting out us. Parts of us. The cold in my chest pulsed hard at that, like it wanted to warn me. Or maybe taunt me. Jake's hand tightened around mine. If we do this, we might not walk away the same. Or at all. I looked at him, at the pale glint in his eyes under the moonlight, and thought about the way my body had moved without me in the ravine. We're already not the same, I said. Now help me. The tether drew us in like a rip current, pulling our thoughts into the same center. I felt Jake's heartbeat against mine through the link, felt his fear and my own twisting together until I couldn't tell them apart. The clearing began to darken, not from clouds or shadow, but as if the light itself was draining away. The fragments at the tree line went still, their heads lifting in unison to watch. And then the ground beneath us pulsed. 1 beat. 2. We were back in the hunting ground. The black thread spread in every direction, stretching into the void. I could feel our shared line like a thick rope knotted deep into my chest. It hummed with everything, my thoughts, Jake's thoughts, the Skinwalker's voice hiding in the static. Jake's presence was solid beside me. On 3, he said in my head. 1. The threads around us shivered. Somewhere in the dark, something began to move, slow, deliberate steps, claws clicking against unseen ground. 2. The rope between us tightened like a noose, heat building until I thought it would burn through my ribs. The movement in the dark picked up speed. 3. We both pulled. Not to control, not to command, to rip. The rope fought us, thrashing in our grip, every other thread around it tightening to hold it in place. And then the steps in the dark broke into a sprint. The Skinwalker was coming. A shriek tore through the hunting ground, rattling the web like a storm wind. The fragments screamed back in answer, their voices 100 shades of rage and hunger. The rope split halfway, just enough for a white-hot pain to rip through my skull, flooding me with memories that weren't mine. Jake's first night with it. The ridge. The deal he'd made. Then, snap. The tether was gone. Everything went silent. The black hunting ground collapsed like paper burning, the threads curling into nothing as the dark peeled away. I hit the forest floor hard, my palms sinking into cold pine needles. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me and replaced with air that wouldn't warm. Jake was sprawled a few feet away, pale, gasping like he'd been underwater too long. His eyes found mine, and for a heartbeat I couldn't read them. Then he gave the smallest nod. The clearing was empty. No F. They leaned inward, trunks bending at unnatural angles, bark stretched like skin pulled too tight. The stones that had marked the path were gone entirely, as if they'd never existed. And then I saw it. The Skinwalker stood at the far edge of the clearing. Not rushing. Not charging. Just watching. It tilted its head, and for the first time, I saw no hunger in its eyes. Only, recognition. Its voice rolled low through the trees, almost a purr. You've cut the rope. Good. Jake hauled himself to his feet beside me, swaying. Stay back, he rasped. The Skinwalker didn't move closer. It only smiled. Now you're loose in the forest. No leash. No rules. Its grin widened, showing too many teeth. Let's see how long you last. Then it stepped backward into the trees, and was gone. The night air rushed in, heavy and damp, the forest creaking like old wood. Jake turned to me, eyes still pale in the moonlight. We're not safe, he said. I didn't need the tether to feel that was true. Somewhere deep in the dark, I could still hear it moving. Hunting. Only now, it was fair game.